Hello, good people. Okay, let's uh, let's talk about this movie, Nefarious. This, yeah, well, the movie is based on a book that came out in 2016 called The Nefarious Plot. This movie is not about an exorcism, which has really surprised me because usually Hollywood has remade the original Exorcist movie, which was great. I don't know how many times Hollywood has remade that movie, and it's just not those remakes and what have you. They're just really not very good. So it's not about head spinning or levitation or things like that. It's a very, very intelligent and very good portrayal of the mind of a demon, of what a demon is, and how demons interact with us, and how they go about destroying all hope within us. And the movie was too preachy for some, but it is theologically and scripturally a one. That's a demon. That's what a demon looks like. This portrayal of Nefarious, this demon who has possessed a man named Edward. It is really good and it is profound. It's a very clever story. You have a man named Edward who is going to be executed for these crimes, but he is, this demon Nefarious has taken him over. Okay, but there's a hold on his execution. They have to have one more psychologist come in and sign off that Edward is sane enough to be executed. That Edward's not insane, but that he can be executed. He's sane enough to know what he did and is therefore responsible for, and apparently there were very gruesome crimes, murders, that he is responsible, that he can be held responsible for those crimes. They have to have a psychologist, a guy named James Martin, who happens to be an atheist, comes in, and he is going to evaluate Edward. The two of them are together to see if Edward is sane or insane. He is going to give that last sign off. And the whole film is a conversation that takes place in this prison. It's amazing. It shows you, well, to start off with, the film is going to show you just how cunning, intelligent demons actually are. And they can know more about us than we know about ourselves. And as Nefarious says, I know more theology than everyone who has ever lived. Let's go into this conversation. It has a number of topics. We'll discuss those as we go through the film. Okay. So obviously there is going to be a lot of spoilers in this film. If you haven't seen the film, you might want to go watch the film first, then come back and take a look at my whole thought and analysis of the conversation that is going on between Nefarious, the demon who's possessed Edward. Sometimes Nefarious lets Edward talk. Between these two and this atheist psychiatrist. Okay, well, the film opens. You have a gentleman, you don't know who he is. He is another psychologist. He's writing a note, and he looks very, very helpless. He's alone in his office. He just writes a note. You see him put on his coat, picks up his briefcase, walks out of the office. The next thing you see is this psychiatrist who had previously talked with Edward and Nefarious. You see him fall out the window, commit suicide. And then you move to the penitentiary in Oklahoma, Dr. James Martin. It's like the atheist psychologist we're going to be talking about. So on his way to this prison, which was filmed in Oklahoma, on this way to this prison, it's Edward's execution is 4 or 5 hours away, but they have to have one more psychologist look at him. So James Martin shows up there. He meets the warden, and the warden tells him that Edward is one of the most manipulative people you will ever meet, and to be really, really careful. And he tries to convince Martin, this man's not insane. He's just an evil man, committed horrible crimes. But he can get into your head like nobody else can. And this man, Edward, is very, very dangerous. That's what he tells Dr. Martin before he walks into that room. Then he walks into that room, and you see Edward there at a table. So they're sitting across each other at a table. And the demon starts talking. Very first thing Edward, Nefarious, tells Dr. Martin is, I am a demon. And I love the acting, because when Nefarious talks, there are these exaggerated expressions on the face of Edward, all revealing a struggle going on within Edward to try to get control of himself back from Nefarious, who is doing all of this talking. And just at the very beginning of this conversation, Nefarious already tells things about Martin that stuns Martin. There was no way this man Edward could know this stuff about me. And so Martin's already, okay, this is interesting. Okay. And then Nefarious tells Martin, you will commit 3 murders before you leave here today. And Martin dismisses that as absurd. And he starts, Martin starts talking, and Martin asks him his name, and he says, Nefarious. It comes from Nefariamus, a Phoenician demon. I go all the way back to Phoenicia. And he says, and then Martin, he heard about the death of that psychiatrist at the very, very beginning of the film. His name was Fisher. And he says, why, okay, did you kill Fisher? Says, yes, I did. And Martin asks Nefarious, what, are you God? And Nefarious looks at him and says, that is a stupid question. 1, the demons know they're not God. Demons know they are creation of an all-powerful God. They want to destroy that creation and show that they can destroy whatever this creator creates. And then Nefarious says, I'm not afraid to die because I cannot die. I am a demon. Demons are purely spiritual beings. No, they cannot die. And indeed, at the moment of creation, when God created the heavens and the earth, these demons under Lucifer made a choice for all eternity. So they cannot be redeemed. An angel cannot be redeemed, because they have made that choice they made. I will not serve. I am, out of our pride, out of our arrogance, and as we'll see out of a serious misunderstanding of what free will is about, they fell and they separated themselves and decided they would wage war on God's creation. Okay? It cannot be redeemed because that decision was made for all eternity. We human beings, we have time to seek out repentance, to change our minds, and to come and know and love the Lord. We live in this universe, so we have that time. The demon's choice, I will not serve, is made once, and it's made for all eternity. And conversation continues to go on, and well, they get into this conversation. Well, okay. Well, first, Nefarious is shortened form of Nefarious, the one who is nefarious, points out that names have power. And because we want Martin to use the name Nefarious. But so the names have power. Where have we heard and seen that before? Okay. Names have power. Because you look in the New Testament, they know God exists. Stupid question. I know God exists. I know more about God than you probably ever will, Mr. Atheist. But in the New Testament, they know who the Lord is, and they know the power of the name of the Lord. You got the disciples going out and doing exorcisms, and then power of the name of the Lord. Names do indeed have power. And in this, Nefarious points out the rage. One of the great, before I get to that, one of the great things about the portrayal of Nefarious in this film by the actor is just the rage. The rage that Nefarious has underneath. The hatred for us that Nefarious has underneath. It is just complete. Demons absolutely hate us, and they want to destroy us. And how are they going to do that? That's what comes up next. Nefarious starts talking about possession. Dr. Martin asked him, so Nefarious, you possess this man. And he says, well, just like that or something? And Nefarious gets angry. No, he's always angry. He's in a rage. Possession is a series of steps. It could start when you're a kid, you're very young, with a Ouija board, other things like that. And the demon will start out with small temptations, sins that are not that serious. And then there is this process. It is indeed a process, a series of temptations that grow over time. Once you give in to the first temptations, then the temptations will grow and become more serious, of greater duration, and they will increase in intensity over time. Exactly. That is how you become under the control of the evil one. The evil one is going to come upon you. Start with easy temptations. It's okay if I do this little shoplifting. And gave into that once, got a doorway open. And then another temptation is going to come, and it's going to be greater. And that temptation is going to last longer. And it is going to be even more intense as things go on. And Edward tells Martin, Well, Martin says, you really have that much power over people. And then Edward speaks. Nefarious makes me do things I do not want to do. Through Nefarious's power and control over me. It's all because of a series of yeses that Edward made early on as time went on. Okay. So these temptations, he gives these temptations. Edward was constantly saying yes, the series of yes. And they're gradual, they become greater, more intense, on and on. And that begins the process. What does that tell us? What does that tell us? When we have these temptations coming upon us, one, realize if those temptations can come from the world, they can come from ourselves, our own fallen concupiscence, they come from the evil one. What you want to do with these temptations is immediately start to pray in the name of the Lord. Please, the power of the name of the Lord, Lord, relieve me of these temptations. Do not engage with the temptations. Do not try to argue with the temptations. That is good. That is wrong. Don't try to start rationalizing it or arguing with it. Because if it's from the evil one, he knows more about you than you ever will. He knows your weaknesses. So you ignore him. Just ignore him. Do not argue with the evil one and pray for deliverance from those temptations. Do not argue with the evil one. You're not going to win it. Knows more about you than you will. Knows more scripture, theology, all of that than you will. Don't argue and realize all that demon wants is your destruction. Okay. And points out, well, I'm here going to take a moment to talk about, it doesn't show up in the film quite so much, but when it comes to demonic possession, which is what the film is about, there are stages to it. As Nefarious points out, is a gradual process. You need yeses. You're caving in temptation, caving. And they get worse and worse. Well, when you're really talking about possession, one of the things movies about exorcisms actually do get right is part of it, what you'll see is a stage called infestation, which is haunted house stuff. We'll call it that. Voices, apparitions, your crucifix flipping around, objects and objects moving around without human agency, and so on. And then you have what is called oppression. And oppression can, what Nefarious is describing when he talks about his series of steps, temptation gradually growing in intensity and duration, he's talking about what is called oppression. That demon has latched on to you and is just constantly after you. And it's after you. And is working on those steps, temptation after temptation after temptation. Sacrament of reconciliation. Ask your pastor to pray for you. Ask in the name of the power of the Lord. Ask the Lord to strengthen you and to help you resist these temptations. Do not entertain the temptations. Do not argue with the temptations. Have others pray for you. And oppression can end Because if you don't, what can happen in the end is you're going to get major depression and anxiety. You're going to run into all kinds of relationship problems, sleep disturbances, things like that, as this oppression gets worse and worse. Okay. And then finally, you're going to have the stage of possession. A demon cannot take over your soul. A demon does come into you. They're taking over your mind. You're consenting to their taking over your, just as you consent to the Holy Spirit taking over your mind. Possession, you're consenting to the evil one taking over your mind. But you never, that demon cannot take over your free will. Just as the Holy Spirit, you have to love and serve the Lord in and through your free will. You will always have your free will. The demon cannot take that from you. But you keep consenting to the evil one. He can, by taking over your mind, take you over emotionally and mentally, and break you down completely so spiritually that you're letting that evil spirit live in you and through you. And that is what becomes possession. Okay. And then why did you drive that first psychiatrist to suicide? Again, his name was Fisher. He wasn't that psychiatrist that you had jump out the window was going to declare you insane so you could live. You weren't going to be executed. He's going to declare you insane, so execution's off. So why did you have that first psychiatrist Fisher fall out the window? Well, I have no problem with being executed. I can't die. And I no longer need Edward, so I want to be executed. I want Edward executed. I don't need Edward anymore. Edward can go to hell. Okay. Then at this point, Martin is thinking Edward has some kind of dissociative disorder. What used to be called a split personality disorder. But he decides I'm going to have a priest come in. I'm going to call a chaplain in, a priest, come in and talk to you. And I want to see, I want his opinion. Okay. Well, Nefarious gets a little scared at this. And he tells, Martin, you are just a sack of meat. That chaplain, he isn't going to help you. He isn't going to protect you. Martin, I am Nefarious, and I have power over your life. Martin, no, you don't. You have no power except what comes from below. And I want you to write me, and you are going to write a book for me. That's what he says. Then this chaplain comes in. The chaplain's not afraid. He's not really a man of faith. Dismisses possession as really in the scriptures as a symbolic thing, and he thinks, well, this is a psychological issue and problem. And so he comes in, and Nefarious is pretty afraid of him, though, at first. And that's because power of the name. He is an ordained minister. What is he going to do? Well, Nefarious talks to this ordained minister and finds out the ordained minister doesn't really believe in possession. Okay. Well, needless to say, Nefarious is no longer afraid of him. And as far as Nefarious is concerned, you've got no power over me. And in fact, you ordained minister, chaplain, Catholic priest, you are just an impostor. And you've no faith yourself, no power of the name in you. He dismisses him. And he leaves. And then Nefarious looks at Martin. And Martin is, all right, prove to me that you are a demon. Go ahead and inhabit me. And Nefarious says no. Well, Martin at the stage is not convinced. Nefarious says no. Well, okay. You're not going to inhabit me. You can't prove to me you're a demon. But he talks Martin into saying, okay, I give you permission, Nefarious, to inhabit me. And Nefarious just looks at him, smiles a bit. Martin doesn't really feel anything, he doesn't react to it. And that's it. But the way it's filmed, you now know that Martin knows that Nefarious knows even more about Martin. And indeed, Nefarious says, I got what I needed. Okay. Well, then he allows Edward to talk. After this, Edward comes out and Edward is absolutely tortured. Why? Guilt over the sins that he has committed, these evil crimes that Nefarious had made him do, sheer horror and terror of who you experience as complete evil, having complete power and control over you. Edward is absolutely tortured. Edward has no hope, no idea how to get out of this. As Edward says, sometimes Nefarious leaves me alone just so I can experience the pain. Pain of that possession, the pain of being under Nefarious's control and of doing these evil deeds. All that pain from things that I've done. Edward, he has no way out of it. But Edward does not want to die. Edward does not want to die. Nefarious has no more use for Edward. And then right after this, at the very beginning, Nefarious said, you will have committed 3 murders before you leave here today. And then Edward brings up, you killed your mother. You euthanized your mother. No, my mother, Martin says, was in a tremendous amount of pain. She was terminally ill. And Nefarious, you just didn't want to have to go and visit her anymore. And yeah, she'd have died anyway, right, Martin? And you wanted, you wanted all the money in the will that was going to be given to you, and she died. Martin, of course, is absolutely shocked by this. And he is really shocked. How did you know this? What? Martin is stunned. And you can see in Martin a little bit of guilt starting to arise. Yeah, Martin was rationalizing everything he had done. And as Nefarious told him, you know what you did 10 years ago, you'd be in prison for first-degree murder. He's really beginning to break down Martin. And now he's really getting to Martin's head. And for a moment, Martin realizes, I'm really rationalizing this. And Martin resists. No, the reasons I gave you, it was a good act. She was terminally ill. She was in a great deal of pain. Okay. And you can see some helplessness over this in Martin. Martin's an atheist. No forgiveness for that. Martin is an atheist. Nah, that's not what I did. She was terminally ill. She was in a lot of pain. And I did a charitable act. I didn't kill her. Nefarious. Yeah, you sure you didn't want to just no longer visit her anymore? She could die anyway, wouldn't she, Martin? And then there's that money in the will, which I'm sure helped you make that decision. and then Martin starts talking about his dissociative disorder, and Nefarious just goes, the Manual of Psychological Disorders. There's a book that lists all the psychological disorders that psychologists use. Nefarious knows every word of it. And he goes, which dissociative disorder? Which one? And that stuns Martin because he knows these psychological diagnoses better than Martin himself. And then Nefarious, I have a lot of patience. Something about, when the evil one is affecting you. Yeah, they have a lot of patience. Thing is, one of the things that happens in your life as you become holier and holier, and you've resisted those temptations. You've done it through prayer, asking the Lord to help you resist those temptations, not rationalizing or arguing with those temptations. Okay, this is temptation. Here's the good. Here's the evil. Not arguing with the evil one that's maybe the one tempting you. Okay. If you do that, demons are indeed very, very patient. But after a while, if you've really grown in holiness, they get frustrated. Okay. I'm wasting my time here, and they'll move on to someone else. And demons have all the time in the world, and what are they here to do? Destroy us. And then the conversation switches back. Nefarious gets back to this thing he pointed out earlier. Martin, I want you to tell my story. I want you to write a book. And Martin, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. A devout atheist bringing forth some demon's manifesto. Yep. And then Martin points out, I'm going to write my book. I'm going to write that book in, and you're going to write my book. This demonic, this anti-gospel. It's an anti-gospel. And we'll get into what that all says here in a bit. And then Nefarious points out, I know more theology, I know more about God than anyone who has ever lived. Yeah, it's going to be a great book. But it's going to be an anti-gospel. And it's going to be this anti-gospel that's going to change the world and take everyone away from God. And then starts, and this is where Nefarious starts talking about who are we? We're not God, that's for sure. We're pure spirit. We're actually a part of creation itself. Okay? Demons are not supernatural creatures. They were created by God. Okay? So they're not some outside supernatural force. They're created by God. Demons are a part of God's creation. Lucifer. That moment God created the heavens and the earth. The heavens is referring to the angels. And this is what Nefarious says was going on with Lucifer. God gave us free will. But what did God want us to do with that free will? He wanted to enslave us. I'll give you free will if you do one thing with it. Yeah, you have free will, but there's only one thing you can do with it. You can know, love, and serve me. The mind of Nefarious, wait a minute, you've given me free will. If I have free will, I can do anything I want with it. And if I can't, then I'm really just a slave to serve you and to serve your material creation. That's not. What good is free will if all it means is I have to do what you tell me to do? And that right there in this film is the very, very, well, a deep truth that applies to us today. What does free will mean? Okay. Free will has nothing to do with being enslaved to God. That's Nefarious things. Okay. You gave me free will, but the only thing I can do with it is know, love, and serve you. Well, that's a slave. And I'm not going to be enslaved by you. No. In fact, I'm not going to be enslaved by you, but we're going to show that we can destroy anything that you create. We're going to destroy your creation. Because free will, what good is free will if I can't do whatever I want to do? Free will means I can do what I want, whatever I want to do. That's what free will means. That's how the modern world sees free will. It means you should be able to do whatever you want to do. If I have that abortion, I can have that abortion. If I want to do this job, I can do that job. If I think it's a good right thing to euthanize my mother, I can do that. That's what free will means. I can do whatever I want to do. That's pretty much the modern understanding of free will. And that's in this film, and it's true. That's not how the fallen angels saw it. Yeah. That's how fallen angels see free will. You gave me free will, that I can do whatever I want to do. And I choose not to serve you. That's not free will. That is not what free will is. Free will is your choice, your ability to choose to do the good. Free will does not mean you have freedom to do what is not good. Free will means to do the good. And what does doing the good mean? To know, love, and serve God. Okay. God, out of his free will, created us to know, love, and serve him. Yeah. But we have the freedom to say yes or no. But that freedom was given to us so we could say yes, because love is a gift. When you say yes to God, I am going to know, love, and serve you, you're not becoming a slave of God. You are making yourself a gift to God. I, Father Barnabas, out of my free will, chose to know, love, and serve God. I'm not a slave to God. That's how Nefarious saw it. If I had seen free will as doing whatever I wanted to do, well, one, I wouldn't be here. And two, I'd probably be dead by now. And on the streets, who knows where I would have been. Because I would have been choosing my will to do this at the expense of the good of others. Our free will allows us to make ourselves a gift of love to others. The good doesn't exist unless, well, the good exists, but we have to choose that good. That is what free will is about. That's why he gave us free will. God gave free will to a husband so he could freely choose to make a gift of himself to his wife. He doesn't become a slave of his wife. No, I'm a gift. I'm going to making myself a gift to you, to know love and serve you all the days of my life. The wife. I am making a gift. I am doing the good. God called us together in this marriage. There is a good I can choose. So I am choosing that good. And that's the big mistake that Nefarious makes about the nature of free will. And it's very much the same mistake we make in our world today. And Martin, well, as I said, Nefarious told Martin he is going to commit 3 murders before he leaves. Oh, that first murder was who? His mother. And Martin is struggling with that one. Nefarious knows that was a murder. And he's just letting Martin know. Don't try and rationalize that away. Martin, you're just like me. You think freedom is to do whatever it is you want to do, not the choosing of the good. You don't want to be burdened by others. You can do what you want to do, even if it's at the expense of others, and it's not the good. God, as Nefarious says, God creates and we destroy. Okay. Nefarious goes on to say, we can destroy what God's create. And this anti-gospel Nefarious wants to write. It's all about how we evil ones are going to destroy you. And as Nefarious says, no, God's plan was to remake you in his image. No, you are made in the image of God. We, demons, are here to make you in my image, in our image. Nefarious is telling Martin, I'm here to remake you, not God's image. You were created in the image of God. I'm here to remake you into my image. And you're well on your way. And you, the people we destroy, become our means to that end. That was Edward. Edward is just a means to an end for Nefarious to go out and destroy. Okay. At this point, Martin is convinced that that Edward believes what Nefarious is saying. Okay, Edward really believes this. So he declares him insane. I cannot, this is funny, I cannot, Martin, psychologist, evaluating you, believe now that you are insane, so therefore you cannot be held responsible for your crimes, therefore you cannot be executed. It's not what Nefarious wants. And why? Well, Martin tells Nefarious it would be murder. Martin has in his head, did I commit a murder? Okay. And, Edward, you're insane. It would be murder. Martin is really struggling here. And then, so you have the first murder. And then Nefarious tells Martin about his girlfriend, and that his girlfriend right now is on the way to have an abortion. Martin is the father. And Martin tells him, go ahead, call her. Try to stop it. You can. And Nefarious is right. This girl, the girlfriend, is going to make a sacrifice of her child because she believes that Martin will leave her if she doesn't have this abortion. Nefarious challenges him to stop that abortion. Okay. Well, Martin, and after Nefarious points out, here's this act of sacrifice. It's much like much like in the and Martin and Nefarious goes on. It's like the pagan child sacrifices. Yeah, she's gonna sacrifice her child for the good of this relationship, for convenience, for allowing you to go on with your career and not being burdened by being a father. I want to keep this relationship going on with you. Well, Martin is very, Martin is selfish. He gives the standard arguments. I'm not ready to be a father. Martin, I know, I'm not ready for this committed relationship either. And I'm not ready to be a father. Why? Because it's going to be inconvenient. I have my career I want to continue to work on. Martin is 35 years old, established psychologist. And Martin says, hey, she can do what she wants with her own body. And Martin looks at him, okay, so you can give life and then you can take it away. Creator creates and we destroy. Well, Martin goes to the phone, finds out she'd already done the abortion. Yeah. That abortion had already occurred. And Nefarious is, well, yeah, you wanted your freedom to do anything that you wanted to do. You have that freedom. God creates, we destroy. And Martin comes back after making that phone call that abortion had already occurred, and hell rejoices. Well, Martin goes on. Well, it's her body, and I can live, and she can live as we want to. And Nefarious, well, it's happening. She is, and Nefarious is just doing this in real time. He knows the abortion is going on right now. Well, second murder. But Martin's argument, okay. Martin's argument, I can do whatever I want. I have free will. I can do what I want with my free will. It means I can do what I want. It doesn't mean, he's not thinking free will means you have the ability to choose the good and avoid the evil. Two very different understandings of free will. And Nefarious, yeah. Well, Martin, and you can tell this psychologist already agrees with Martin on what free will is. To do what we want to do. Not to do the good and avoid the evil. Well, now that is your second murder. And, well, of course, Martin is becoming, well, you can see a whole lot of stuff going on in Martin's head. You know, earlier he had told Nefarious, talking to Edward, I can't kill you, that would be murder. But then this abortion went and occurred because everyone's thinking free will means I can do what I want to do. I can do what I want with our own body. And it really contradicts who a psychologist is. He is to help people. And indeed, Martin's there to keep a murder from happening if indeed Edward is insane. So what does free will mean? The freedom to choose the good or the freedom to do what you want to do. And it shows up stunningly in that conversation right there. Okay. Well, and then Martin is, how do you know all of this about me? Well, Nefarious keeps messing with Martin. And then all of a sudden, Nefarious all of a sudden says, nope, I'm not a demon. Well, how did you know about that abortion? And Martin has got a problem. If I am not a demon, then how did I know everything about you? And if I am a demon, Nefarious tells the truth. You've committed 2 murders. What's your job here, Martin? You're here to declare me sane or insane. And if I'm insane, my execution would be a murder. Okay. And then I love this part of the film. Okay. Listen up, Nefarious. Good and bad are just social constructions. They're just these ideas. Society come together and they get together and decide, okay, this is bad and this is the good. Okay. Good and bad is just a social construction. Okay. Nefarious says, do you really believe that the people I have killed believe that? Do you believe, Martin, that the people I have killed believe that the evil of my killing them was a social construction of some kind? Or was it an evil? An evil. Is life good? Then destroying it is an evil. Not social construction? Well, it's not in the film, but if that's true, you can socially construct anything you want into good and evil. And that is exactly what Nefarious is at. What he wants Martin to do is write this book, indeed, where everyone literally forgets and no longer even believes in such thing as good and evil. Because it's really just a social construction. And that is how the demons are going to destroy us. That was absolutely great in this film. Okay. And then, then Martin says, well, if you demons are here to destroy the world, you're losing. You're not doing a very good job because we're freer than we've ever been. We've conquered slavery. We're overcoming gender equality. We have overcome racism. Notice what just happened here. All of a sudden, good and evil are no longer social constructions. Martin has just gone from saying good and evil is a social construction. We can get together and decide what that is because we have free will to do what we want. Ah, but then he goes to these absolutes. He goes, no, evil is a racism. Racism is an evil, and that's not a social construction. Slavery was an evil. That's not a social construction. So he immediately contradicts himself. And he says, well, Nefarious, we're taking the high ground. You know, uh, we have gotten rid of slavery, all this improvement in gender equality. We're freer than we've ever been. Nefarious, if you demons are real, you're not winning. And then Nefarious comes back and says, did you know that the average high school graduate reads at the 6th grade level? And you have basketball players making $30 million a year wearing shoes that are made by slaves in other countries while they are condemning racism. And Nefarious reminds Martin, we have more slaves today than the world has ever had at any point in its history, including the height of the Roman Empire. There are 40 million slaves in our world today, and half of them are sex slaves. And then Martin says something, and I'm not quite sure. Nefarious says something, I'm not quite sure what he means. He said, hate speech? Hate speech? You guys did that all by yourselves. We didn't even have to help you, and we're really impressed with that whole thing about hate speech. And then Nefarious goes on, well, open your eyes, Martin, there's evil everywhere. Everywhere. And, Martin, no one cares. Yeah, and no one cares. See, Martin, everybody's worldview is changing, thanks to us demons. Thanks to demons like me, Nefarious, world is changing into a place where the worldview is such that they can no longer see evil. And that is the complete destruction of you, because then it's nothing to get you to do evil. And Martin, it's going to be a world where no one cares, because they can't see evil anymore. And that, Martin, is pretty much the theme of the book that I'm going to have you write. Okay. And then something else comes, and then at the end of that, something comes up. Turns out that Edward Nefarious, when it comes to being executed, he says, I want to be executed because I don't have any use for Edward anymore. Well, Nefarious, in and through Edward, chose the electric chair rather than injection. Why? He wants to torture Edward more. And he tells Martin that Edward won't die on the first try, and it's going to be wonderful. And then Nefarious gets up and breaks Martin's thumb, just so Edward could enjoy the pain of it. Tells Martin he enjoys pain, but the pain is for Edward. Okay. And he goes on to tell Martin the book is going to be a worldwide phenomenon because I am going to tell people what they want to hear. There's no evil. You can do whatever you want to do. Okay, and you're going to write my dark gospel, which is going to be the opposite of the gospel. There is no good and evil. We're not here to know, love, and serve the Lord. And in fact, my dark gospel is going to be a huge, huge phenomenon. Then after it's done, people aren't even going to see evil anymore. Okay. And you are going to have this complete rejection of God. Okay. Okay. Well, the warden comes in and tells Martin, you need to see this. Martin goes to Edward's cell and he finds that Martin has a huge scrapbook that is full of, covers all of Martin's life. Okay, Nefarious has this scrapbook. Martin's life from the very beginning, and it's huge. Stuff Martin even didn't remember. And then there's another book called I, Nefarious by James Martin. And the warden tells Martin, look, if you don't execute this man, if you declare him insane, he's going to find a way to keep tormenting you. He is never going to let you go. He is never going to stop pursuing you. And Martin's looking at this book. The scrapbook goes back to the beginning of Martin's life. You know, he's just in a psychiatric hospital somewhere. And as manipulative as he is, he's coming after you, Martin. He's coming after you. He's not going to stop pursuing you. Exactly. Demons are not going to stop pursuing us. They know God exists. They know the Lord is coming to the world. But they made that one eternal choice to reject God. And they're not going to stop pursuing us. They're never going to stop trying to destroy what God has created. That is what they chose to do. That's what they chose to do in an eternity. He's not going to. And Martin slightly begins to understand this. Yeah, if I don't declare this man sane so he can be executed, he is going to keep pursuing me. Martin's not sure. At this point, Martin's really not all that sure what's going on here. And then Martin, who has the handcuffs on him, but it's got a long chain between them. Nefarious gets up with those chains and attacks Martin. Starts to strangle him. While he's talking to him, you know, I've been pursuing you since you were a child. Almost just like that. Nefarious is showing his power. Martin, I'm the most powerful thing you'll ever meet. I have you in my chains, and I'm going to kill you. Martin gets so horrified, terrified. You're not quite sure, but it sure does look like Martin does. Excuse me. Martin does go against his own conscience. This man's insane. Goes against his own conscience. Declares him sane. So now Edward is going to be executed. There's number 3. That's the third murder. Okay. Very true. That's very, very accurate. That it. You can't argue with the demon. They know more about you than you know yourself. They know what your weaknesses are. And they're not going to stop pursuing you. And that is going to be why it's called the church militant, and why the Lord is always saying we're in a spiritual battle. And the greatest weapon against Nefarious and the rest of the demons is prayer, sacraments, not engaging, arguing with our temptations, not allowing ourselves to rationalize what we know is not the good, but asking the Lord for the strength to pursue that good. And it was a great betrayal of what how demons really work, and what they're about, and what they want to do. And a lot of it goes right back to that whole question of what is free will. We're given free will by God to know, love, and serve God. That doesn't make us slaves. That means we're his agents to bring about the good. Lucifer, Nefarious, I want you to forget about all of that. Free will means you can do whatever you want. And then once that happens, that series of temptations will come, and they will destroy you. What God creates, we destroy. Absolutely perfect. And so, the very next scene, the next scene of the film is the execution scene. They're in the room for the execution. Nefarious keeps torturing Edward. He's in the chair, and you have the glass window, and Martin is there. And then Edward comes out of the chair and jumps up on the glass window. Martin, tell them the truth. Martin, tell them the truth. And they put him back in the chair. They hit him once with the electric chair. It's gruesome. It's horrible. It's a horrible form of execution. Doesn't work, has to do it the second time. Edward is dead. And then you hear Nefarious's voice, and Nefarious starts taking over Martin. Martin grabs a gun. He's going to kill himself. Well, he's going to kill other people there. Everybody's talking to him, calm him down. And Martin says, God help me. Puts the gun here, pulls the trigger. Nothing happens, and the gun doesn't work. No, there's nothing wrong with the gun. God help me. Time of temptation. Oh, you're really struggling with temptation. Back to the church, back to the sacraments. To confession. Have your priest pray with you. Have friends pray with you. And just ask the Lord, Lord, help me. Help me to resist these temptations. Just recognize them as temptations. Don't try to rationalize them. Don't try to argue with them. Just ask in the power of the name of the Lord. Go to church. Ask the Lord to give you the strength to overcome these temptations. Have others pray with you. You keep doing that, and you keep growing in holiness. It'll become less and less. They can't win, so they move on. That is how truly evil demons are. And that movie really gives a deep insight into theologically and scripturally correct understanding of the demons. And if you haven't seen the film, I would suggest you go watch it. If you have seen the film and you've missed what I've said, of course you go watch it again. And if you have liked my thoughts on this film, please like and subscribe and send it out to others. And I hope you all have a really great rest of your day. And the next movie I look at it's going to be an uplifting movie. I'm going to find an uplifting movie with some great Christian themes to it. And that Don't know what it is yet. I haven't found it, but that's what we will do next. And God bless you, and have a great rest of your day. Amen.